After Benjamin Clark, the only man I had ever loved before. My marriage died from a sudden heart condition. I fell into a darkness so deep I thought I would never climb out. It was Alexander Carter who pulled me back. For 8 long years, he loved me quietly, a shadow at the edges of my grief, never demanding, but always waiting. Then for 2 more years, he walked beside me, step by step, patient, constant, until I finally found the strength to live again. I had once thought his devotion was the truest form of love. I had once believed marrying him would be the safest choice I could ever make. But safety, I was learning, was an illusion. The night I discovered he had spent a reckless evening with Sabrina Lewis, the girl who had once adored him in high school, that illusion shattered. He told me she was pregnant, carrying a life that did not belong to me. And then he looked into my eyes with a calm so chilling it nearly broke me. He said if I could accept her child as my own, we could simply start over, as though betrayal could be erased with one cruel bargain. I stared at him in disbelief, my voice trembling as I asked Alexander, "Do you really think so little of me? Do you think I am so low, so desperate, that I would trade my own dignity for your twisted version of equality?" He said nothing, only tightened his jaw, and in that silence, I felt the distance between us grow into an abyss. We argued again and again, circling around the same wound that would not close. Every word sliced me open until I could no longer stand to look at him. One morning, as I worked in my study, buried in case files and contracts, Alexander appeared in the doorway, already dressed for the office. His voice was sharp, deliberate. "When can you clear a day?" I looked up from my papers, distracted, and asked why. He met my gaze for only a moment before lowering his eyes to my stomach. My breath caught as the folder slipped in my hands. He said quietly, "The sooner we schedule the procedure, the better." For a long while, I could not speak. My chest rose and fell as I forced air into my lungs. At last, I turned to him fully, my voice steadier than I felt. "Do you want to divorce me, Alexander?" His eyes widened, almost startled, and he shook his head quickly. "No, never. Why would I want that?" "Then why?" I whispered. "Why are you so determined to make me end this pregnancy 2 weeks earlier?" I had collapsed in the middle of a courtroom, my body finally giving way after days of consecutive trials and sleepless nights. At the hospital, the doctor smiled gently as he told me the truth. I was pregnant. The words should have terrified me, but instead they filled me with a joy so fierce it made my eyes sting. I thought Alexander would be overjoyed as well. Instead, when I told him, he stared at me in silence. That night he did not sleep, and for 3 more nights he wandered the house like a man lost. On the 4th day he said, "It's not the right time. There will be another chance. This one, let it go." His request was not tender, not thoughtful, but cold, heavy, final. I could not accept it. We fought bitterly, words spilling out like venom, until both of us collapsed into exhaustion. Finally, I packed a bag and left, renting a room in a hotel where I drowned in silence. For a week he did not come. He did not call. The emptiness inside me was louder than any shouting could have been. When he finally appeared, he looked thinner, his face drawn and tired. He stood before me, shoulders slumped, eyes dark with misery. "Victoria," he said, "if I do not insist, you will never look back at me. I will always be chasing, always begging. You cannot be that cruel." I almost laughed because I had never been cruel to him in my life. I had given him more of myself than I ever thought I could. And yet when he reached for me, I followed him home. I told myself it was easier to pretend nothing had happened than to face the jagged truth. For a while, we avoided the subject, burying it beneath routines and trivial conversations. But unease never left us. One evening, as I tried to bring up the courage to talk, Alexander spoke first. His voice was low but laced with irritation. "I told you already, this is not the time. Why can't you understand? We can have children later, but not this one. Not now." Each word was a stone-heavy crushing until my chest ached with the weight of it. I pressed my palms against my desk, willing myself to stay calm. For the past week at the hotel, I had turned over every possibility in my mind. Maybe his company was in trouble. Maybe he was ill. I had even taken his medical reports to a specialist desperate to uncover a hidden truth. But there was nothing, no sickness, no crisis. Nothing but his relentless demand that I destroy what was growing inside me. Alexander, I said, my voice trembling but fierce, I do not understand. We are married. We are happy, or at least we were. I am carrying your child. How is bringing a life into this world anything but natural? His only answer was silence. He stared at me, his jaw locked, his eyes unreadable. For a moment, I thought the conversation would die again, suffocated by that silence. Then he spoke. Come with me tomorrow. I want you to meet someone. The next morning, we drove through San Francisco without speaking. The city blurred past the windows, the Golden Gate standing tall against a pale sky. My heart pounded harder with each mile, fear and anger twisting inside me. I knew he was hiding something. I knew he was leading me toward a truth I was not ready to face. I knew with absolute certainty that Alexander Carter was hiding something from me. The silence in his eyes, the way his words cut short whenever the subject turned toward the pregnancy, it was all too telling. He would not speak the truth aloud, but I felt it pressing between us like a weight neither of us could escape. That secret was tied to his relentless insistence that I should not keep our child, and in my heart I feared that today, as we drove through the streets of San Francisco, he would finally reveal it. I told myself that no matter what he said, I was ready. I was angry, deeply wounded, and I promised myself I would not forgive him as easily as I had before. Yet despite my fury, a part of me still clung to love, still believed that if we faced the storm together, we could survive it. I had prepared myself to stand beside him through anything, even through betrayal, even through darkness. It was naive, almost laughably so, and I would only realize much later how foolishly I had loved him. The car slowed and then stopped in front of a small flower shop. I followed his hand as he pointed toward the entrance. A woman in a loose flowing dress was seeing a customer out with a polite smile. When the door closed, she pressed a palm against her lower back, sighing as though her body ached. Her stomach was round, full, heavy with life. She was clearly close to her due date. "Do you recognize her?" Alexander asked. I shook my head uncertainly. Something about her seemed familiar, but I could not place it. He urged me to think again, his gaze distant. At last he said her name, Sabrina Lewis, our old classmate. The sound of it rattled me. I searched my memories until a faint image returned. In high school, there had indeed been a girl like her, sharp and bold, always carrying her instrument to rehearsals, always taking the stage at school performances. I had nearly forgotten her face, but I remembered one thing vividly. She had once declared her love for Alexander over the school's broadcast system, reckless and brazen in a way no one else dared. I turned to him sharply. "She used to like you." He did not deny it. He admitted he had thought it nothing more than youthful infatuation, something fleeting. But a year ago, he confessed he ran into her again. And she told him she still loved him. My breath caught, my hand clenched so tight my knuckles whitened. "What are you saying, Alexander?" He met my gaze without flinching. "For 13 years I loved you, Victoria, and for 13 years she has loved me. Do you know what that feels like, to look into someone's eyes and see the same desperation, the same lowliness you feel in your own soul?" The coldness in me deepened. "So what?" I asked, my voice like ice. He laughed bitterly, a hollow sound that chilled me. "Sometimes I wonder," he said, "if you ever truly loved me. Did you love me more than you loved Benjamin?" He did not speak Benjamin Clark's name, but we both knew who he meant. My first love, the man whose death had carved a hollow space in me that Alexander had spent a decade trying to fill. I stared at him, unable to recognize the man beside me. "Alexander, what is it you are trying to tell me?" His expression hardened, his sorrow vanishing into something colder. He said he no longer cared if Benjamin would always haunt my heart, no longer cared if he would forever be second best. All he wanted, he claimed, was equality. All he asked was that I accept the child Sabrina carried. Then we could begin again. His words struck like a blow. I froze, my voice breaking as I repeated them. The child in her womb is yours. He rubbed his temples. Exhaustion etched into his every line. I didn't cheat on you, he said. I only gave her a child. The world tilted beneath me. My skin went cold, my stomach knotted so tight I thought I would collapse. Without another word, I opened the car door and stepped out, slamming it shut with a force that echoed in the street. I walked away, desperate to escape the suffocating madness of his confession. But Alexander followed. He caught my hand, his grip firm, almost pleading. Victoria, I know you can't accept it right away, but please think about it. I just want us to be equals. I don't want to always be the one chasing, the one giving everything. My body went rigid. My teeth ground together, and when I finally spoke, each word was deliberate and sharp. Let go, Alexander Carter. You make me sick. The impact of my words struck him like a physical blow. He stumbled, his grip faltered, his eyes wide with disbelief. What did you just say? I pulled my hand free and looked him straight in the eye. I said you make me sick. Something inside him snapped. He laughed, suddenly harsh and manic, a laugh that carried no joy. Sick. You dare call me that? All these years, all my devotion, and you see me as nothing more than a loyal dog circling at your heels. 10 years of pursuit, and in the end you pitied me enough to marry me, but you never truly let go of him. You never let go of Benjamin. His voice grew louder, edged with desperation, with anger, with something unhinged. Do you know what it feels like, Victoria? To be a joke in everyone's eyes. To be the man who gave everything only to always stand in the shadow of a ghost. His words spilled like poison. But all I felt was a deep, bone-cold ache spreading through my chest. The man who had once sworn to protect me, to cherish me, now stood before me not as my husband, but as a stranger consumed by bitterness. And for the first time, I saw clearly that our marriage, built on years of patience and promises, was crumbling beneath the weight of secrets, envy, and a love twisted beyond recognition. So that is what you truly think of me, Alexander sneered, his voice trembling with rage. You are just like the others, aren't you, in your heart? I have never been a man. You chose only a loyal dog, circling your feet, begging for scraps of your love. For 10 years I chased you, and in the end, you pitied me enough to marry me. But even now, even after vows and years together, you have never let him go. Benjamin still lives inside you, doesn't he? The more his voice rose, the colder I became. My heart tightened until I felt as if my blood had turned to ice. I remembered the day Benjamin died and how Alexander had been there hovering at the edges of my grief. He had confessed then that he had loved me for 8 years already, since high school. I told him I could not be with him, not when I was drowning in sorrow, not when I was broken and unwilling to use him as a bandage for wounds that would never heal. He had smiled through tears and told me it was enough simply to stay near enough if I let him be by my side, even without my love. Later, when I finally relented, when I agreed to try, he had clutched me so tightly, I thought he might break apart in my arms. He cried then, overwhelmed, swearing that even if I didn't love him yet, he would wait. We had a lifetime ahead of us, he promised, and in time I would see he was my future. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. His devotion had seemed so pure, so steady. But somewhere along the way, his love soured, curdling into resentment. The tenderness I once admired became something darker, something bitter. I was still lost in those thoughts when a voice cut through the air. Alexander, is that you? I turned sharply toward the sound. Sabrina Lewis was crossing the street awkwardly, one hand clutching her swollen belly, the other waving eagerly. Her smile was too bright, too intimate, as if she had every right to greet him this way. Alexander dropped my hand without hesitation and rushed forward to steady her. Slow down, he murmured, his hand at her elbow. There's no need to rush. Sabrina laughed softly, sticking out her tongue in playful defiance. I just wanted to see you sooner. Why didn't you tell me you were coming if I hadn't spotted you? Her voice faltered as her eyes met mine. The smile on her lips froze, draining into nervous silence. She released Alexander's arm quickly, her face pale. "Victoria." She stammered, "It's been so long." The sight of her clinging moments earlier to my husband filled me with such disgust I could scarcely breathe. I had no wish to remain even a second longer, but she stepped toward me, hand outstretched, as if to touch me. I recoiled instantly, my voice sharp. "Don't touch me. You're pregnant. If something happens to your baby, who do you plan to blame?" Alexander slid between us, his hand raised as if to shield her. His voice was low, commanding. "I know you're not that kind of person, Victoria." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "I used to think you knew me better than anyone. I used to believe that." He faltered, opening his mouth as if to speak, but Sabrina interrupted, her expression twisted with guilt, her tone trembling. "This is all my fault. I never wanted to ruin your marriage. I only wanted to keep this baby. But my body is weak. I don't even know if I'll live long enough to see it grow. That's why I'll disappear after the birth. I won't come between you two." Alexander turned to me, his eyes heavy. "Think carefully," he said. "You don't have to answer now." I met his gaze without flinching. "I can answer right now." My voice was clear, strong, final. "Alexander Carter. I will end this pregnancy, and after that we are done. I want a divorce." His face drained of color. Rage and despair flickered across his expression. Later, when I packed my belongings, he smashed half the house in fury, screaming that I could not throw away 10 years, as if they were nothing. But I had already decided. I asked Melissa Turner, my best friend, to go with me to the clinic. She held my hand when the procedure ended. She stayed with me when I left the mansion behind. When Alexander stormed into my hotel room days later, his voice cracked with disbelief. "Victoria, how could you let those 2 words divorce slip from your lips so easily? Don't you know what I have been to you all these years? You never understood. From the beginning, it was always me chasing, always me begging. Did you ever once look back? Did you ever once choose me without pity?" He shook, his anger barely contained. "Sabrina waited 13 years for me," he shouted. 13 years. How could I reject that? I saw myself in her all those wasted years of waiting. Do you think I wanted her child? No. I only wanted you to prove that you love me. I studied him for a long time, longer than I had the strength for, until his face blurred into something I could no longer recognize. The man before me was not the man I thought I had married. He was a stranger, consumed by obsession, desperate to twist my pain into proof of his worth. Slowly I whispered, "You don't need my proof. Pretend I never loved you. It will make this easier." A bitter laugh rose from my chest, brittle and dry. I turned to Melissa, who had stood quietly by my side. "Do you remember I asked when you divorced Jason Morgan? I thought Jason was a bastard, but now I see he was better than Alexander Carter in one small way. At least Jason admitted his mistakes. At least he let go when the marriage was broken. Alexander cannot even do that. Once he had been good to me. Once I believed his love was my salvation. But standing there staring at the wreckage of our lives, I could no longer tell where devotion had ended and destruction had begun. In the days after I left Alexander Carter, his words would not stop echoing in my head. Again and again, I replayed them, asking myself if perhaps he had been right, if maybe I had been blind to his sacrifices all these years. Everyone said he had given me everything. Even his own mother once laughed and told me her son seemed born for no other purpose than to care for me. If only he spared a fraction of that attention for her, she joked she would be the happiest woman alive. Friends and colleagues looked at me with envy, whispering how rare it was to find a man so devoted, how lucky I was to have someone who had chased me through the years and finally married me. They said I should cherish him, that I should be grateful, and I truly was, yet somehow, all of that devotion had twisted into bitterness, into resentment I could no longer recognize. Was it because I was not enough? Was it because I had done something wrong? I turned those questions over in my mind. until they burned holes in my chest. Melissa Turner, my best friend, held my hand one evening as I sat trembling on her couch. Her voice was firm, her eyes blazing. Right is right, wrong is wrong, she told me. It doesn't matter whose fault it is or who thinks it is. If he insists it's all because of you, then that's his own delusion, not your burden to carry. Her words were steady grounding, but my heart still wavered. For years, I had advised other women as a divorce attorney, guiding them through heartbreak, warning them not to be manipulated, urging them to think clearly when pain threatened to cloud their judgment. I thought I was immune. I thought I would be different. Yet when it was my turn, I was as blinded, as fragile, as lost as any of them. When the nurse wheeled me out of the operating room, I saw the hallway crowded with people. Melissa stood in front of me, a protective shield, her body angled to block Alexander and Jason Morgan, who had both appeared without warning. Alexander's face was pale. His smile forced his eyes frantic. "Victoria, I'm here to take you home," he said, his voice shaking. Melissa stepped sideways, her tone cutting. "Mr. Carter, will you walk away yourself, or should I call someone to escort you out?" "You know I have plenty of connections," Jason added coldly. "Don't call her sister. You and I both know people find their equals in life, and you are not hers." Alexander was finally pulled away, though his eyes clung to me until the very last second. Even as Jason dragged him down the corridor, he shouted that divorce was not something I could decide alone, that it wasn't over just because I said it was. I did not answer. I curled up on the hospital bed, drawing my knees close. My hands pressed against the ache in my lower belly. The emptiness inside me was unbearable, the hollow throb of something lost forever. It was not sharp pain, but a dull, consuming ache that spread through every nerve until I shook with it. The child had barely begun a fragile seed of life, and already it was gone, ended by my own hand. But it was the only choice I could make. I could not sacrifice the rest of my life for a marriage that had already died. I could not bring an innocent child into the world as the consequence of lies and betrayal. I told myself it was rational, the right decision, but reason did not erase grief. That night I whispered to myself that I would allow one more evening of weakness, one last night of sorrow. In the morning when the sun rose, I would be iron again. Melissa took me home, promising she would care for me herself. She asked what I planned to do next, and I told her simply divorce. But before that, I had to know the truth. Every word Alexander had spoken to me, every excuse, every explanation I no longer believed. I had connections, ways to discover what he was hiding. But in truth, I only needed one answer: was Sabrina Lewis's pregnancy natural, or had it been conceived through artificial means, as Alexander once claimed? That afternoon, the confirmation came. A trusted contact slipped me her medical records. Natural conception, no clinics, no treatments, no intervention. The lie collapsed under its own weight. He had cheated. It was that simple. I thought I was ready, thought I would feel nothing. But when I rose from the sofa to fetch a glass of water, my legs buckled beneath me and I collapsed onto the rug. Melissa rushed forward, her voice panicked. "Victoria, are you all right?" I forced a smile, shaking my head. I used to watch women in my office discover their husbands' affairs. I watched them scream, cry, tear their homes apart. I always looked at them with cool detachment, telling myself I would never behave that way. I would be stronger, wiser, calmer. Melissa knelt beside me, her arms wrapping tight around my trembling shoulders. Her voice was gentle, breaking the silence. "Cry if you need to. You've been hurt, you're allowed to feel it. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Her embrace was warm, her hand rubbing circles on my back. And in that moment, all the defenses I had built crumbled. Tears burst from me in violent waves. My body shook as sobs tore through me, raw and unrelenting. I cried until I could no longer breathe, until exhaustion dragged me into sleep on the floor of her living room. For the first time in weeks, I did not dream. I don't know if it was Melissa's words, her arms wrapped tightly around me, or simply the warmth of her body seeping into mine. But in that moment, the walls I had built crumbled. Every feeling I had buried for weeks erupted all at once. Tears poured down my face, my sobs rising from somewhere deep in my chest, until they spilled out in loud broken cries. I trembled on the floor, my body convulsing with grief, until exhaustion finally dragged me into sleep, without my even realizing it. When I awoke, Melissa was still there watching me quietly. She asked me what I planned to do next. I closed my eyes again, my voice hoarse but steady. I will wait. Wait for what she asked gently, for Sabrina's child to be born. That baby will be the key to ending this marriage. I had no clear evidence of Alexander's infidelity. For nearly a year, he had hidden every trace, never slipping, never leaving a trail. To investigate now would be nearly impossible. But I didn't need his messages or his confessions. A DNA test would be enough. Once the child was born, the truth would speak louder than any denial. Still, I knew I had to follow the proper path. The first step was to ask him plainly, would he agree to divorce me peacefully? When we finally met after a week of silence, I asked him directly. He ignored the question at first, staring at me as if he could read the answer in my face. Then his voice broke with suspicion. You're lying to me, aren't you? You didn't really end the pregnancy, you're tricking me. His words sliced through me like glass. Is that what you think, Alexander? Do you need to watch the doctor cut into me to believe it? Do you want me on that table again just so you can be sure? In your eyes, is my crime unforgivable, or am I simply too cruel for you to comprehend? His expression twisted in pain as each word left my lips. So that's why you let it go so easily, he whispered. No tears, no anger, no fight. You didn't even say a word to me. Victoria? How could you be so heartless? If it had been Benjamin's child, would you have done the same? That name, that wound he refused to stop tearing open, made my blood boil. Yet beneath my fury, a flicker of instinct sharpened. His question gave him away. He was regretting it. For all his arrogance, all his certainty, he was shaken by the fact that I had gone through with it. I asked quietly, almost coldly, Alexander Carter, are you regretting it? I gave up our child, and now you regret it. His face went pale, his body jerking upright from the chair as if struck. I will not divorce you, he said, voice shaking but resolute. Fine, I thought then. Reconciliation is impossible. There was nothing left to salvage. I stayed with Melissa for 2 more weeks, letting my body recover before returning to work. She offered me her home without hesitation, saying we could be divorce allies, teammates, walking through the ruins of love together. I agreed. For the first time in months, I felt the comfort of not being alone. When I went back to the Carter mansion to collect my belongings, I thought he would be gone. But he appeared suddenly, watching silently as I packed. His face was stone, his eyes dark, his lips pressed into a line. He did not speak. He only stood there unmoving, as if his very presence could pin me in place. I forced myself to continue folding clothes, lifting boxes, ignoring the weight of his gaze. Not once did he offer to help. Not once did he try to stop me. Yet I could feel his judgment in every breath I took. Later, Melissa asked me what I thought he was thinking, standing there in silence. I laughed bitterly. He wants reconciliation, but he will never bow his head. He sees me dragging my feet on the paperwork and assumes I am only sulking, waiting for him to coax me back. In his mind, whoever concedes first loses. Perhaps he even sees himself as the victim, the man wronged after giving so much. That is the theater he stages for himself. By then, Sabrina was 30 weeks pregnant. Barely 40 days remained until her due date. From the moment he took me to her flower shop, I cut off contact with Alexander. I did not call. I did not write. If there was any thread left between us, I severed it myself. The next call I received came not from him, but from his mother. Out of respect for her, I answered. Helen Carter began with polite small talk, asking after my health, asking if I was eating well, before quickly steering the conversation toward her true purpose. Sabrina is not a bad girl, she said softly. She is weak. If she loses this baby, she may never have another. You're a woman, Victoria. You understand what that means, don't you? Her words pierce me. A small part of me, the abandoned daughter of divorced parents, almost envied Alexander. His mother's loyalty was boundless. Even in his failings, she shielded him. She would never let him stand alone. I had never known such protection. After my own parents' separation, no one had ever stood beside me so fiercely. I answered calmly, "Yes, I understand. Which is why you should speak to your son. If he agrees to divorce me, you will not only have a grandchild born in wedlock, but also gain another daughter-in-law. That is a victory, isn't it?" There was silence on the line. I imagined her sitting in her quiet living room, her fingers tightening around the phone, realizing exactly what I meant. When she finally spoke again, her voice was heavy. I knew then that she understood me perfectly. Helen Carter tried, but she could not convince her son. No matter how she pleaded, Alexander never once appeared before me in those final weeks. And then Sabrina went into labor 2 days early. She was admitted to the hospital that morning, and by 7:20 that evening, she had delivered a healthy baby boy. The entire Carter family gathered in the maternity ward, their faces glowing with joy. When I arrived, the scene struck me as painfully warm, almost perfect. Alexander cradled the infant in his arms, gazing down at the tiny face with tenderness, his expression soft and wistful, as if he were holding a memory rather than a life. Sabrina lay propped up on the bed, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, but glittering with triumph. If I hadn't walked into the room, anyone would have thought they were a family complete, a mother, a father, and their child. Helen was the first to notice me. She smiled awkwardly, her voice trembling. "Victoria, you're here. Come look at the baby. One day he'll have to call you mother too." A sharp laugh escaped me before I could stop it. "I'm afraid I must decline," I said coolly. Alexander stiffened. He hesitated, then placed the child back in the bassinet, his eyes locked on mine. "You came," he said quietly. I nodded. "There's something you need to do for me." "Anything," he replied, though his tone carried a trace of dread. I gestured toward the nurse standing behind me in uniform, holding a clipboard. "We need a DNA test," I said evenly. "Between you and the baby, please cooperate." The warmth drained instantly from his face. His eyes darkened heavy as stone. Sabrina's composure shattered into panic. "No," she cried, shaking her head. "Absolutely not. He's just a newborn. He's too fragile. How could you be so heartless?" I tilted my head, smiling coldly. "Do you know that every newborn has their heel pricked for blood? It's a standard medical procedure, not torture. Don't act like a saintly mother in front of me." Her lips trembled as she turned toward Alexander, her eyes wide, begging. He stepped forward, placing himself between us like a shield. "She doesn't agree," he said firmly. I crossed my arms. "I don't need her agreement. The law requires your cooperation, and you've already received the court summons, haven't you?" His face darkened further, the last traces of tenderness gone. "What exactly are you trying to do, Victoria?" I stared at him, my voice clear as glass. "Find the evidence. Get the divorce." For a long moment, we stood locked in silence, the weight of the room pressing against us. Then Alexander laughed suddenly, a sharp, bitter sound that made my stomach twist. "Fine," he said at last, "if that's what you want." Something in his tone unsettled me. A chill crept down my spine, but I ignored it. Weeks later, when the results arrived, my foreboding came true. The report was clear: the child Sabrina Lewis bore had no genetic link to Alexander Carter. I had waited months for this. I had prepared myself for the satisfaction of finally striking him down with irrefutable proof. Instead, when I held the paper in my hands, my stomach hollowed as if I had stabbed myself. The next morning, I stormed into his office, throwing the report onto his desk. He didn't flinch. He didn't even look surprised. He only folded his hands calmly, as if he had expected this moment all along. "Why the rush?" he said evenly. "If you want answers, sit down. I'll tell you everything." His voice was too measured, too steady. Rage and exhaustion warred inside me, but I lowered myself into the chair anyway. "Tell me, Alexander. Tell me all of it." And so he did. He spoke of that reunion months ago. The high school gathering where Sabrina had cornered him in drunken courage and confessed that she had loved him for over a decade. He said he had felt sorry for her, struck by the shadow of her devotion. He added her as a friend, let her call, let her linger at the edges of his life. On her birthday, she begged him to attend. They drank too much. Sabrina passed out. He left briefly to buy something to help her sober up, and when he returned, she was gone. He found her later at a hotel, her clothes disheveled, her eyes shining as if she had won something. She told him she was pregnant soon after. And Alexander, the man I had once believed incapable of deceit, chose silence. He told himself he was compensating her, that by claiming her child, he was offering a kindness. His voice faltered only once. "Victoria, if we ever have children, I could never pretend this baby is mine. Not yet, maybe not ever, but I couldn't abandon her. Not then." The words rattled inside my chest until I could barely breathe. I rose from my chair, gripping the edge of his desk to keep steady. "Is that all?" I asked, my voice thin, breaking. He leaned forward, his eyes searching mine. "Is that all you have to say? You don't want to understand me? You don't want to forgive?" "2 days from now," I whispered, "is the divorce hearing. Don't be late." His face fell dark and sharp. "I told you the truth. I bared everything, and you still want to leave me?" I turned away, my throat dry. There was nothing left to say. Sometimes I wondered how I had missed it before, the way Alexander's mind bent and twisted reality until it became something only he could recognize. I told him flatly that I was not the kind of woman who could be led around with a few sweet words, that whether he had physically cheated or not was irrelevant. Choosing to play the saint or to carry someone else's sins had been his decision. He had no right to drag me into the wreckage. His eyes grew darker, heavy, with a disappointment that stung almost like contempt. He looked at me as if I had stripped away the very illusion he had been clinging to. "You really are this cold," he said bitterly, "this unfeeling." I laughed, the sound sharp and hollow. "Cold, unfeeling. When you entangled me in a debt I never owed, when you forced me to bear the weight of consequences I never agreed to. Did you ever ask what I wanted? You call this fate, but the cause was yours alone, the effect you forced on me. Being your wife has felt like nothing more than a sentence I never deserved." His mouth tightened. "So the only thing you resent is that I kept it from you." I shook my head, cold and final. "Alexander Carter, for once in your life, try to use your brain." The divorce hearing arrived on schedule. He did not fail to appear, but his stance was firm, unyielding. He refused to grant me freedom, not because he loved me, but because I lacked enough proof to show the court that our marriage had deteriorated beyond repair. When the ruling came down, the judge refused to grant the divorce. Outside the courthouse, he intercepted me again, his face set in that maddening mixture of helplessness and authority. His eyes, deep and almost pleading, looked at me as if I were some stubborn child. "Victoria, this was my mistake," he said, his voice unusually soft. "From now on, I won't hide anything from you again. Let's forget all of this and start over." I nearly laughed in his face. "How many times must I repeat myself before you understand that I am not the kind of woman swayed by promises and sweet apologies?" I pulled out my phone, unlocked the screen, and showed him the photo I had kept. His face cracked instantly, the calm mask shattering. "Where did you get this?" he demanded. "Who else?" I asked lightly, my voice ablaze. "Look at the timestamp. The night after that reunion, you and Sabrina couldn't even wait. You went straight to a hotel." He scrambled for words. "That night we were both drunk. It was only once. Once I sneered. Once, twice, a dozen times. What difference does it make? You've lied so often I wouldn't know truth if you handed it to me." He fell silent. I pressed on. "Do you know why I didn't submit this photo to the court? Because it wouldn't have changed the outcome? I knew before we even entered that courtroom that the judge wouldn't grant the divorce. His whole body tensed, yet he clung to his refrain. I will never divorce you. The cruelest irony was that in the one arena I had mastered law, I could not win against the man I married. That was the wound that cut deepest. He leaned close, his voice low, raw, with a dangerous kind of desperation. Victoria, I will never let you go. I paused only long enough to steady myself. I didn't turn back when I answered. Is that so? Then I suppose we'll just wait and see. The next day, without hesitation, I filed for a transfer with my firm, requesting a posting abroad. Within a week, the request was approved. When Melissa helped me pack, she was half aghast, half wistful. God, you don't waste time, do you? I smiled faintly. The truth was, I had been offered this chance long before. I had turned it down thinking distance would erode our marriage. But now what was there to protect? This was a blessing disguised as misfortune. The salary was double the experience invaluable. Why shouldn't I go? She shook her head, muttering about fate's cruel humor, but I only tightened my grip on the suitcase handle. This was my choice. This time I would not be dragged. I told almost no one about my departure. Yet somehow, Alexander knew. At the airport, as I wheeled my luggage toward the gate, I saw him standing there, tension carved into every line of his body. It had only been days yet. He looked darker, more haunted, like a man strung tight on invisible wires. Why are you leaving the country? He demanded the moment our eyes met. You said you wanted a divorce, didn't you? I met his gaze without flinching. I told you I'm in no hurry. Do you have anything else to say? If not, step aside. My plane won't wait. He stepped closer, his voice dropping ragged. Do you hate me that much, Victoria? Hate me enough to cross an ocean just to escape me. I took a deliberate step back, the distance between us like a knife. If that's what you believe, then there's nothing left for me to explain. If that is what you want to believe, Alexander, then I will not waste my breath trying to stop you. My voice was calm, flat, almost cold, but the fire inside me burned like it would consume me alive. He grabbed my wrist as I tried to walk past him, his voice breaking into a desperate shout. You cannot leave. I turned my head slowly. My eyes narrowed. Do you want me to call security or should I call the police? I jerked my arm free and kept walking. He stumbled after me, panic spilling from every syllable. I was wrong, Victoria. I was wrong. Please don't go. The words tumbled out raw and unpolished, but they did not stop my steps. His voice broke again, softer this time, almost begging. Can we at least talk, please, just once? Let us talk. And for a moment I let myself pause. Perhaps clarity was owed even if it came too late. Perhaps emotions had to be exhausted before the end could finally settle between us. I turned back slightly, and he seized the chance. Must it come to this, Victoria? Must we end this way? I looked at him unflinching. What other way is left? His eyes filled with torment as he blurted, I loved you for 8 years. 8 years, not 8 days. Can you really be this cruel? 8 years. The words hung between us like a weight. I met his anguish with steel. If I want to acknowledge those years, they might be a blessing. But if I refuse, then they mean nothing to me. Those years belong to you, Alexander. I did not ask for them. I did not benefit from them. Why should I carry their burden? He froze, his mouth parting as if he had never once considered that truth. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. So that is what you think? That all these years it was only me giving alone in my devotion? His eyes darkened, further, voice cracking with pain. Do you think this wreckage is only my fault? Do you carry no blame at all? If not for you, I would not have turned my back on that child. My heart lurched, my lips twisting in a bitter smile. Because of me, don't tell me you betrayed me, and then convinced yourself that I had done the same. His expression shifted, his jaw clenching, and then he spat it out. The day you collapsed and were admitted to the hospital, I was there. I frowned, impatient, and he hesitated, then gave a humorless laugh, sharp and cutting. Must I really spell everything out? I had no more patience. I turned ready to leave him there on the edge of his delusions, but his voice followed me ragged and pleading. Wait, I heard you that day. You were on the phone with Melissa. Melissa, my chest tightened as I remembered. Yes, she had called me that afternoon, and I had told her my secret with trembling joy. What did I say? That I was pregnant, that I was overjoyed, that for the first time I thought I might finally have a home of my own, a family of my own. I wanted a child with him, half me. We had even laughed once about baby names. But Alexander's face twisted, his voice raw with bitterness. Victoria. I know you have never forgotten Benjamin. Even if this child was mine in your heart, you only thought of him. Tell me, what am I supposed to do with that? I stared at him in disbelief. Benjamin. After all this, he still dragged the dead into the living. Where did you even come up with this delusion? The photograph. His voice cracked. When you spoke with Melissa, you kept touching his picture. I pulled out my worn wallet and opened it, sliding out a faded photo kept in its translucent sleeve. You mean this? His entire body jolted, his eyes wild. He shot up so suddenly his chair crashed to the ground with a violent crack. No, it cannot be. His voice shook, caught between terror and disbelief. Why, how I placed the photo gently on the table. The first time you took me to your apartment, I saw your old student ID and slipped this picture inside. The truth is, even earlier than that, when I agreed to be with you, I had already put Benjamin's memory away. And the name for our child, that was something you came up with the night you proposed. But you have forgotten, haven't you? His face blanched, his hands trembling violently as he reached for me. Victoria, what have I done? What did I do to us? What about our baby? His voice broke, tears threatening to fall. I pried his hands off mine with steady resolve. You want comfort? Then here is my comfort. Even without this misunderstanding, we would still end in separation. Because you never trusted me. Because you never saw the present, never looked toward the future. The only thing you ever clung to was the past. And for that, I thank you. Thank you for waking me from this illusion in time, for giving me the chance to cut my losses. Alexander Carter, goodbye. I turned my steps firm, not faltering even once, though my heart bled in silence with every stride. But my heart was unbearably heavy. I had loved him with every ounce of myself, and still he chose not to trust me. I had given everything, loved him foolishly, desperately. As if my devotion could erase the years he spent waiting for me. 8 years of his silent love, 2 years of walking by my side, and 5 years of marriage. I had tried to repay it all, and yet he turned that history into accusations, bitterness, and blame. What had I been doing all this time, if not giving him every part of me? The thought made my chest ache, as if the air itself had become poison, choking me, pressing until I could hardly breathe. Helplessness, weariness, pain. They came crashing like an unstoppable tide. I thought of myself with a bitter laugh. Victoria Hale, you are pathetic. I left the country for a full year. I buried myself in work and chose to enroll in an advanced program, splitting every waking hour between courtrooms and classrooms, trying to stitch myself together with motion, with deadlines, with sheer force of will. Each day bled into the next, and in that endless rhythm of work and study, I rebuilt myself. When Alexander called, I let the phone ring in silence. The second time I picked up, only to end it with a curt word, and hung up. But he called again, and this time, his voice was frantic, stripped of pride. Victoria, it has been a year. I have been searching for you every single day, calling, writing, trying. And now you're back, the first words from your lips are still divorce. Why am I so worthless that you cannot even give me one chance? Do I matter so little that you cannot even look me in the eye? Even if you hate me, even if you want me to crawl on my knees and beg, at least grant me the decency of a conversation. You cannot deny me even the chance to speak. His desperation bled through the line, but my voice was ice. Do you know why it had to be 1 year exactly? Silence. He did not understand. You were right, Alexander. I left because of you. I ran. But 1 year has meaning you will never ignore. From the day of our first trial until now, we have been separated for exactly 12 months. And that under the law is the clearest proof that this marriage has deteriorated beyond repair. In the upcoming appeal, whether you agree or not, we will end this. My voice did not waver, but inside I felt not triumph, only a dull ache. It was not anger anymore, only exhaustion. The irony was bitter in the very field where I was strongest. It still took me 1.5 years to end my own marriage. Not because the law was slow, but because time itself was the cruelest test. It hollowed you out, drained every piece of hope, every drop of willpower, until even the strongest heart grew numb. People don't always collapse in storms, they collapse in silence. After a year of limbo, most stop fighting, whispering to themselves, "Fine, I'll endure." A little longer, a little compromise. I had seen it in clients over and over, women who once swore they would leave, but stayed because time eroded their resolve. Of course, there are faster ways: violence, adultery, crime. But that is like walking a tightrope, and even if he falls, even if he loses everything, the scars left on you might never heal. I knew this better than anyone. So I chose the long road, 1 year, and I endured. The day the appellate court delivered its ruling, I finally breathed. The weight pressing against my ribs for so long vanished, and I felt lighter than I had in years, as if the sky had broken open and sunlight had spilled through at last. And Alexander Carter. He looked hollow, drained of life itself. His eyes empty, his once confident shoulders slumped under the wreckage of all he had destroyed. He stared at me with an expression I could not quite decipher. Resentment, sorrow, bitterness, disbelief. His voice cracked with anguish. "Victoria, you are merciless. For a year I thought I could save us, that there was still a chance. I never knew you had already sentenced me. You planned everything." I lifted my chin, a faint smile curving my lips, though my heart no longer beat with rage. If that is what you need to believe, then yes, call it a plan. Today I am in good spirits and I don't feel like arguing. Whatever he said, I let it stand. I had never expected Alexander Carter to suddenly awaken, to collapse in tears, to beg forgiveness, or to crumble so completely that life without me would be unbearable. Men like that were rare in real life. Most, when faced with the ruins of their own making, chose resentment over remorse. And resentment, that was the reality I had to accept. So I closed the chapter. I left the country again, taking another long-term assignment. 6 months later, I returned stronger, promoted, my salary doubled. While abroad, my inbox pinged with an email from Alexander. 3 words only: "I'm sorry." I typed back without hesitation. If you have already betrayed me, then those words are meaningless. Don't say them again. What he never imagined was that I truly had ended the pregnancy. When the truth reached him, something inside him cracked. The child that might have been his flesh of his flesh, gone forever because he had pushed me past the edge. And yet he didn't dare face it. Admitting regret would have shattered him completely. Jason Morgan asked him once, half incredulous, half disgusted, "What the hell were you thinking, dragging Victoria to meet Sabrina? Did you really believe that would end well?" Alexander had no answer. His relationship with Sabrina Lewis was a stain he could not scrub away. So he hid it. He avoided her, refused to text her, even blocked her number before stepping into his home. Because he knew that to Victoria Hale, even a speck of dust could not exist between them. If she had found out the whole truth earlier, everything would have ended long before. But then came that night when Alexander overheard me speaking with Melissa Turner. A simple conversation about my pregnancy, about my hopes, about wanting a family of my own, about wanting a child who was part of him and part of me. Yet in his fractured mind, the shadow of Benjamin Clark. The man who had loved me first. The man death had stolen from me, rose like a ghost. Benjamin had always been the nightmare that haunted him. Every day, every night, Alexander measured himself against the memory of a dead man. Who did I love more, him or Benjamin? The question festered in him like rot. And so he demanded I end my pregnancy. He took me to Sabrina, parading her swollen belly before me, forcing me to face the choice he thought I would make. All of it was a test, an insane, desperate test, to prove that I loved him more than I loved a ghost. In his mind, he pictured the outcome he wanted. He thought he would see me break, see me scream, weep, beg, unravel, until I was nothing. He thought I would cling to him, out of fear that jealousy would finally cage me. He did not love Sabrina Lewis, but he adored her worship, the way her eyes followed him with longing, the way she made him feel like a god instead of a man. Forever second to another's memory. He believed if I saw her, if I saw the living proof of her devotion, I would finally be afraid of losing him. That fear would bind me, but reality did not bend to his fantasy. I did not scream, I did not weep, I did not cling. I ended the pregnancy with cold precision and then demanded a divorce. And in that instant, Alexander Carter plummeted from the heaven of his illusions into a hell of his own making. Jason asked him again later, "What were you trying to prove?" Alexander's voice was flat when he answered that she loved me. Jason's laugh was sharp, merciless. "And what made you so sure she did? Where the hell did you find that confidence?" Alexander faltered. His lips parted, but no words came. Finally, in a voice barely audible, he whispered, Because she married me." But the truth was brutal. He never had the courage to dig too deep. Every time memory rose, he woke drenched in sweat, his chest aching, his hands trembling. He blamed me. He blamed Sabrina. He even blamed his mother, Helen Carter. He blamed everyone but himself. In his mind, he was not wrong. He had only done what he believed was best at the time. And if given the chance to go back, he told himself he would choose the same path again. Alexander Carter clung stubbornly to Sabrina Lewis and her child, as if by keeping them near, he could convince himself that none of it had been a mistake. He told himself he was doing the right thing, that raising another man's baby was some kind of redemption. But Sabrina was never satisfied. She wanted more money, more promises, more of him. She wanted marriage. The very thought of it made Alexander's skin crawl. Marry her? He didn't love her. He never had. But then a darker thought struck him. If he couldn't even love the woman he married, then why had Victoria ever agreed to be with him at all? Pity habit? That question gnawed at his bones until his jaw ached from clenching, until the metallic taste of blood filled his mouth. His twisted bond with Sabrina soon rotted. One day she vanished, leaving him scrambling to find her. When he did, she looked him straight in the eye, cigarette in hand, smoke curling between them like poison. "You said you'd take care of the child, didn't you?" She sneered. "Well, here. He's yours now. I don't want him anymore." Alexander's stomach dropped. "That's your baby," he whispered. Her laugh was sharp, cruel. "If it weren't for you, I would never have had him. You think I wanted this? Don't flatter yourself." He flinched, his face paling. Sabrina's eyes glittered with mockery. "Men like you are all the same. Sweet words behind your wife's back, sneaking around with me. But when she leaves suddenly, you want to play the good man again, the upright husband. Isn't that what thrilled you? The thrill of stealing, of cheating." Her words burned him with shame, not the shame of guilt, but of humiliation. His cheeks flushed red. "Don't twist it. I only pitied you. Pity me," she barked, a laugh. "You think pity justifies anything? 13 years, remember. You clung to that number like it was proof I loved you. But it was nothing. Empty words. We hadn't even seen each other in years. What did you think? I was in love with a fantasy, a memory?" She smirked. "But maybe that's who you are too. Didn't you say you pined after Victoria for 8 years? 8 years, and you fooled yourself into believing it was love. You lied so long you started believing your own lies." Her voice sliced through the last of his defenses. He snapped, striking her across the face in blind rage. But Sabrina Lewis was no helpless victim. Her companion, a man who had once helped her escape, was waiting. Alexander was beaten down, left sprawled on the ground, bruised and broken. Gasping for air, he sat in the alley, trembling. fingers fumbling for his phone. He scrolled to her name, Victoria Hale, hovering there, unsure, terrified. At last he typed 3 words. "I'm sorry." He never expected a reply, but it came sharp as a knife. "If you've already betrayed me, then sorry doesn't matter anymore." Alexander laughed, then a hollow sound until it cracked into sobs. He cried until his chest heaved, until he couldn't breathe. He told himself he was holding on for the child, for Sabrina, for some twisted chance at redemption. But Sabrina abandoned him too, leaving him with chaos, her angry mother collapsing into the hospital. Debts piling high and the company crumbling in his hands. Each day bled into the next. The work multiplying, the money shrinking. He sat alone at night staring into nothing, asking himself the question he couldn't escape. How did my life turn into this? He knew Victoria had returned to the country. He knew she had been promoted, thriving, her career blazing brighter than ever. But he did not dare approach her. He only followed from the shadows, watching her from afar, like a man stripped of every right, like a beggar peering into a home that would never welcome him back. Until one night, by cruel coincidence, he saw her again at a hotel. She was laughing at a dinner table, radiant and serene, her voice carrying easily over the hum of conversation. She looked free, untouched, as if she had shed every chain he had ever wrapped around her. And Alexander. He shrank in the corner, shoulders hunched, eyes lowered, unable to step closer. He caught his reflection in the mirror across the room and saw the truth written there. He was nothing more than a dog. Pitiful, unwanted, forever shut out of the life he thought he owned. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next videos.